to move attention over to Amalie, who's going to talk about, as I said, it's extremely important and exciting health topic, because the research has been exploding of late and changing very quickly, and Amalie has done an amazing job in getting, I suppose, ahead of, like, on top of all the latest and the greatest.
Yes.
So you are literally getting the most up-to-date gut health info right here. Because in the last couple of minutes it's actually changed already. And please, be warm and welcoming as you always are. Questions, she's going to be certainly asking them. And just a couple of things about Amalie. She's not just a nutritionist. She also does a lot of work with mums and bubs. She does CPR training, like, for parents and grandparents. I think it's super cool. That have had young bubs. Well, obviously the grandparents haven't had the young bubs, but and Kanga, which is a type of exercise you do with.
It's like Zumba with babies. Zumba with baby.
Oh, so she does a lot of the exercise side of things as well. So I'd love to. Let's welcome Amalie.
I should probably start by letting you all know that I frequently get tongue-tied. I'm very uncoordinated, and I'm probably my own worst client. And so I've written myself some notes just to bring me back on track. Sometimes I can talk off into the distance on a topic and forget that I'm going to be talking about this. So forgive me if I do look at my notes throughout the session. As Pearce said, the research has changed so much. I last did a gut health talk for Parkdale Secondary College around September last year. And I thought, oh great, I've got my slides, so I can just redo that talk. And when I went back to review everything, some of the research had already changed massively. We know a lot more. So yeah, it was just blew my mind. And I personally have quite bad gut health due to a number of factors. So had a lot of aha moments as I went through. In my opinion, gut health is probably, if you can get on top of that, it's the best thing you can do for your health, and everything else will stem from that. So when I looked at some of the other components of the course that these guys have thrown together for you, it really has arms into every little part of it, and will support the things that you guys have already been learning. So let's get into it. Oh, and I'm a nutritionist. I've done 7 years of undergraduate science study. I'm in the middle of my master's at Deakin, and once I finish my master's, I'm going to start a Bachelor of Psychology, because I'm really interested in that gut-brain connection. So what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about what is the gut, what do I actually mean by the gut. We're going to talk about probiotics, we're going to talk about prebiotics. We're going to talk about some of the links of gut health to our mood, inflammation, and our overall wellness. So what am I talking about when I talk about the gut? So are we talking about the stomach? Are we talking about that small intestine? We know that the stomach's there to kind of mix our food up. We know the small intestine's where we absorb a lot of stuff. And so there's a misconception that when I talk about the gut, I'm talking about the small intestine. I'm actually talking about the large intestine, what I like to call a poop chute. So this big area here. And that we previously thought this area was just kind of a protective, the bacteria sat in there to protect our bodies, and that's where kind of our poo sits before it leaves our body. But what we didn't realise was that this is where the magic happens in our body. So this is what we're talking about when we talk about the gut, is that large intestine. So here's my new picture. This one I really like. This highlights. I always think of when I was a 6-year-old, I did this big study on the Titanic, and I remember thinking, that iceberg, the little bit above, and then you've got the giant bit below, and that's kind of what we know about gut health, is that little bit above. And so there's a lot of people out there that talk about gut health and say, well, if you do this and you do that, you'll improve it. A lot of that has come through trial and error, and what kind of has worked as a health practitioner. You go to university and you learn all this stuff, and then you get out into the real world and you start working with people, and you start to develop your own intuition as to what will work. And sometimes we don't always know why. When we sit down and read the books, we go, oh yeah, that's why, that makes way more sense now. and you know it's repeatable. And so a lot of what's practiced in gut health is based on that intuition and what people have found works through trial and error. But we're learning more and more and more the why behind it, the more research we do. And it's a really exciting field, and there's so many different directions we can go in. So we know that there's a huge number of bacteria that live in our guts, but do we know how much they weigh in our body? Do we know? No. We've got 2 kilos worth of bacteria in our guts. So if you think of humans, we've got 23,000 genes. A snail has 20,000 genes. So not much different, but what differentiates us from a snail, and it really is the bacteria that live in our gut. So we've got around 3 million genes, and when you take that bacteria into account, and that's what is the big difference. So when you look at all of the functions in our body, our genes program us for so many functions, but we've got these bacteria that live inside this ecosystem in our body that send signals outwards to our brain, to our lungs, to our kidneys, to all of our body, that make them incredibly important for our overall health. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. Excellent. It's the second brain of our bodies. So the bacteria in our bodies divide, some of them can divide as they reproduce by splitting in half, binary fission. And some of them can reproduce as quickly as every 20 minutes. So that means that you can have a dramatic impact on your health if you look at changing the health of your bacteria. You can see changes in as little as 2 weeks. So it's not something, a lot of things, I remember someone saying, when you quit smoking, it can take over 12 months to see a change. And for some of us, we want that, we want the change to happen quickly. We want to, put in place our new habits and to have it changing. And so the thing with gut health is that we might not see the change, but that ripple effect will be moving outwards from the changes that you're making to your diet and your habits and things like that. So, what have I got next? Cool, so these terms get mixed up all the time. So the microbiota are the communities that live in our body of microorganisms. And our microbiome relates to the genes. So when we kind of talk about it amongst ourselves, we probably want to be talking about a microbiota, because not many of us are having discussions about what genes go on in our body. And so, not that any of us will have an in-depth discussion with a scientist, but they can get really annoyed if you get these terms mixed up. I just like to call them as bacteria and gut bugs and things like that. So my last session that I did had about 20 science teachers, so I wanted to make sure that I got that distinction right for them. They were like nailing me with questions by this point of the slideshow. So let's talk a little bit more about bacteria. So this slide is the reason why we don't just want to take a probiotic and be like, tick, I've got the right bacteria going in. There's 5 different kind of groups, like families of bacteria that we have in our body, and they've all got different functions. So when you take a probiotic, how do you know which family you need? What if you're adding more of these guys when you actually are lacking these guys? What if you've got an overgrowth of these guys already and you're adding to them? So the latest lady that I listened to was Dr. Sue Reed, and she just called, and you've probably heard the expression that when you take multivitamins, you just got really expensive wee. She repeatedly mentioned that when you take probiotics, you've just got really expensive poo in a lot of cases. So we just want to be really, really clear on what each function is and what they do. And with a specialist, you might be able to increase them, but the easiest way to take care of your gut health is to grow what's already there and to let that flourish, because all of us already have a whole gut full of bacteria. So I won't go into too much detail about what they are, but this guy's kind of the main player, This one is the housekeeper, so they kind of keep inflammation and things like that low in our body. All of these guys ferment carbohydrates. So when people say to me, oh, I'm going onto a low carbohydrate diet, I get quite uncomfortable because we need to feed these guys. And so if we haven't got carbohydrates coming in, and I don't mean like going down and getting a loaf of bread and eating a loaf of bread, lots of different things contribute to our carbohydrate load. So, yeah, keep myself honest. So we've got about 1,000 known species, and I say known species because there's so many bacteria that we actually don't know about still. About 1/3 of them are common to all of us. And this is what really, I think, highlights some of the differences. You know, you might look at someone and go, I have the same diet as them, I have the same activity as them. Yeah, I've got a few different genes, I might have a family history of this. But then sometimes you come up against someone who's got the same kind of family history. So why am I expressing something differently from that person? And it can all come down to our gut health. You know, what's happening down there, have we got inflammation? How many years have we had that? You know, did you have, I had Campylobacter, really bad food poisoning in my early 20s, and now I've got a lot of autoimmune conditions. And through working with a few other people, I can kind of trace all my health issues now back to that. And so that's the difference between me and somebody else who might have all the same, you know, expressions as me. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Any questions? Yeah.
Antibiotics, do they kill all those?
Yeah, so antibiotics, so when you grow stuff on like petri dishes, when you grow like bacteria, you can often see like a line around them. So these guys kind of, they want to kill off other types of bacteria. So they produce stuff they produce their own like food and things, but they also produce kind of compounds that kill off other stuff. And so that's why if you've got a really healthy gut, pathogens struggle to come in and take hold. So antibiotics kind of kill off everything. So they kill off all bacteria. So it's another reason why you don't want to take a probiotic at the same time as you're on an antibiotic, because they'll cancel each other out. But they will really kind of cut through all the bacteria down there, because it just wants to kill the bad stuff, but it can't differentiate. And that's why there's a few different types. You know, sometimes you'll go in for one type of antibiotic and it won't work, so they'll switch to something else, because they might not know yet which kind of group the bad thing that you've got falls into. And so they're kind of taking a guess based on your symptoms of what it is. And then, but it'll kill off the other good bugs that kind of live in that group as well. If anyone's ever, I don't know if has anyone ever had a stool test done and seen the results when you poo in a jar? It's not fun, but you can go and do it for fun. Yeah.
It'd be horrible being a scientist having to do it.
We were talking about this the other day in the clinic I work in. I work in a clinic in Kfibre itself, and I mentioned I was like having a rant about gut health to one of the chiropractor, I think, and he said, "Oh, I hate to do the testing." I was like, "Yeah, we're pretty shit." But you get, when you look at the kind of profile of what's in there, there's stuff that you would probably consider bad in there as well. You know, Clostridium, you know, Salmonella, all sorts of stuff that, and really E. coli. E. coli is massive. Like we grow lots of E. coli is like all over the place. But it's when it gets over, you know. And I mean, being a woman, we've all heard about thrush, you know, like candida. We have levels of this in our body. It's when it gets its a beneficial environment, it's promoted that it overgrows. And so we just want to keep the bad growth low by keep growing all the good stuff as well as we can. So what have I got next? Oh, I don't know if you can see that. I just wanted to give some examples. Yeah, so Clostridium is in there. Enterococcus, which some of you might have heard, you know, that's you get food poisoning and things. It's to do with poo. What else have we got? Bifidobacteria, that's fantastic. Lots of babies especially. We want them to have lots of bifidobacteria. And these guys down the bottom, archaea, they're actually not a gut bacteria. About 10% of our gut's made up of them. We should have 10%. You find if it gets overgrown, you'll be very, very, very gassy. They produce methane. So they help to use up hydrogen in our gut, and they don't eat carbohydrate at all. So their main job is to get rid of the hydrogen, produce methane. But if you get say 20% of those, you have a really gassy person. I called my mum and I said, "Mum, I think you've got an overgrowth of archaea. You've got to get onto that."
She must love you.
Oh, yeah. I said, "I'll send you some really good fibre in the bag. You've got to eat it." And the thing is, we inherit a lot of this. We inherit it from mainly our mothers. The way that we are born affects the bacteria. The way that we're fed affects the bacteria. And so I've got a family history of really gassy women in my family, like really bad, and really bad breath as well, which is a sign of bad gut health. And so, Mum's in New Zealand. She's coming over in a few months. I was like, we're going to take care of your gut health when we get here. It's good. So it's an ecosystem, a real ecosystem. We've got to get these guys here in the first place, and we've got to keep them alive. And then they'll do all sorts of really cool stuff for us. So they create, kind of some of their functions is to create like a biofilm inside our guts. So they protect it. So when we are exposed to bad bacteria, food poisoning, all sorts of stuff. Like, we could all eat at the table and a few of us might get sick again. Everyone knows someone with a cast iron stomach. They've got a great biofilm going on there. It might not even make it that far. So our stomachs are nice and acidic, so the acid in our stomach acts to destroy bad stuff trying to make its way in. Which is why when you have a probiotic, it's usually in a capsule, like a sugar capsule, because it's got to make its way through that acid. I did ask someone recently, I said, these powdered probiotics, like, how does that make its way through? It's some of these guys are more resistant to acid than others, so they can kind of engineer them and pick the right strains that we know are going to make it through there. And the definition of a probiotic is it has to be live bacteria. So if you are looking at probiotics, make sure you check that it's got to be live. If it's not live, it can't be called a probiotic. So many health claims out there. If you really start to this is probably a whole nother discussion, but if you start to look at the words, I've got a law degree as well, and the words mean everything. Yeah, I've done a few things. The words mean everything, and if you kind of break it down, go, what does that word actually mean? Sometimes you think they're making a health claim, but they're actually kind of skirting around and hoping that you'll connect the dots and make the claim yourself because they're not allowed to. So be very wary when looking at health products. So we've got this biofilm. So what that means is a really healthy gut colony. In our large intestine, it should be a nice thick mucus layer and protect the wall. But if we kind of haven't got a healthy gut microbiome, that wall can be eroded. We could have a bacteria come in, go, oh, great, look, here's heaps of space for me, let me grow here. And it can get close to the lining of our gut. It can cause a bit of inflammation because these guys are not meant to get, what is it, I forget its name, the Microba's job is to make that nice and thick. And I guess it's kind of like a verruca on your foot, it makes it tough, and that's kind of what that verruca microbe is doing, is making that lining nice and tough so stuff can't get through. And it grows, you get a bit of inflammation. When we have inflammation, sorry, I've got something on my nose. I had a big jumper on before, and I think it's when we have that, inflammation, it brings heat, it brings water, swelling, and you can have kind of good inflammation, bad inflammation. When we exercise, our body's inflammation, but it helps us. But some inflammation is not helpful. So if we've got this, pathogen growing there in our gut, over time, the inflammation might get worse. Over time, we might get our immune system might kind of go, oh, what's going on? Like, I need to sort this out. And then it starts to overreact because it can't find what's going on. And then we get that kind of cascade of autoimmune stuff. We start to get signals going all over our body saying there's something going wrong here, I can't figure out what it is. And that might be the difference between someone developing, high blood pressure, heart disease, because of that underlying inflammation that started down in their gut. And that's the difference. You know, you look at people that have high blood pressure, some will develop high cholesterol, some will, you know, get these plaques forming. Why are those plaques not repairing? Maybe because our body's spending its energy trying to deal with inflammation somewhere else in our body. They can have really big, that ripple effect that we were talking about before the session, throughout our body. And so we can reduce the risk of things like that by taking care of our gut health. The ecosystem also, it produces its own food. It also helps to release some vitamins for us. So production of vitamin K is in our stomach by the bacteria, they make it. Biotin's made down there. They also help to strip nutrients out of food. So things like antioxidants are extracted in our large intestine from foods. So they help, you know, reduce inflammation and things like that as well. Cool. So diversity. You might have heard people talk about you want diversity with your gut, but what does that actually mean? So our diversity is the richness, so how many species. We don't just want one or two, we want all those and we want a few of each. We also want the evenness, so we want them to be healthy, abundant communities as well. So we don't just want one or two hanging around there, we want it to be nice and thick and happy and healthy and a thriving little city ecosystem of bacteria. So we know that a low diversity means that metabolically we can't produce, you know, we won't be able to extract all of those antioxidants. We won't be able to make as much vitamin K, we won't be able to make as much biotin. So we'll have less access to those nutrients. So you might have two people eating the same foods, but initially one person will be getting more nutrition from those foods than the other person because they just don't have the means to be able to extract all of the nutrition from it. And that's why sometimes, you know, I used to work in an office and you get that comparison, why is that person able to eat all of that stuff? And they're like that, and I eat this stuff and I'm like this. You kind of, you know, that can be one of the differences. Yeah.
Is that like celiac disease? Is that part of this whole process?
No, so celiac happens in the small intestine. Oh. So our small intestine's kind of like this, like lots of areas to absorb. So it's kind of like an accordion of skin, and then on the top of those are these little like microvilli that help to absorb stuff. And celiacs causes that to thin out. So the body's ability to absorb stuff and absorb all of, you know, minerals and vitamins and absorb them at that level of our gastrointestinal system is degraded, and so over time that person won't get as much as what they need. So similar, same, but different. And it really is, that is a genetic thing. It's a kind of nature and nurture as well. So someone has to have that gene before they can express it. Yeah. So we've got kind of, if we don't have as much kind of bacteria in our home, and we're not doing, you know, we don't have as many, we don't have the spread of bacteria that we need and the richness of them, we get that decreased metabolic diversity. We also can't kind of withstand the effects of, you know, outside influences. So if we're someone who needs to take a lot of medication for a reason, if we are exposed to, you know, viruses or bacteria, we have less ability to withstand them because we've got this unhealthy ecosystem happening. Does that make sense? Yeah. Cool. So immunity. Our gut acts to kind of train our immune system a little bit. We send signals, 90% of signals go from our gut outwards. So they use the vagus nerve, that gut-brain connection, but there's also a gut-kidney connection, a gut-lung connection. We're learning more and more about the connections happening there. Our guts help us to suppress kind of immune responses that we shouldn't be expressing as well. So if you're someone who's got an autoimmune condition, not in all cases, but some of those cases can be traced back to the gut and our gut health. And if you do have an autoimmune condition, one thing you can do to reduce the expression of that is to take care of your gut health, which is why when you look at things like the the studies they're doing in Melbourne around, peanut allergy and talking about antibiotics and gut health, and that's it. All of the immune therapy for allergies and things is starting there in the gut, and killing off maybe some of that bad stuff with huge mega doses of antibiotics. So they can be used for therapeutic effect as well. We've just got to really understand what's happening down in there. So with our immunity, I might talk about it here. There are some parts of my show that I can talk about at different points. We lay down, I mentioned earlier, we lay down our gut health in those early parts of our life. So we inherit a lot of bacteria from our family, while we're growing inside mum. We also, the way that we give birth can change the bacteria in our tummies. So we know that a child that comes out via caesarean section has a higher risk of developing celiac disease. We know that they have more environmental bacteria in their guts because of the way that they were born. Not to say it's a lot of us don't have a choice about how we deliver our children, but understanding those effects allows us to then repair them down here. So we know that a child coming up with a caesarean section doesn't have the opportunity to get coated in all that bacteria on the way out that can colonise their gut. And then we know that when we feed our children in those early days milk, we know that breast milk has certain bacteria that come with it. Interestingly, I was questioning, and I've been loath to raise it in breastfeeding groups online because I would get crucified, I think. If you've got someone like me who's got probably a bit of bad bacteria and bad gut health, have I passed that on to my daughter by breastfeeding? The implications of that would be really interesting. I've written, in doing this, I've written down all these other questions that I'm going to go away and look up later. We know that when you bottle feed a child, it's not just, sterilising the bottles isn't just about killing off the bad stuff that might be on there. It's actually destroying that environmental bacteria that then go in and colonise the gut. So implications there as well. I found that hugely interesting. We lay down the foundation of our gut health in the first 3 months is critical, which is why there's that focus on breastfeeding there, but then also that first 12 months. By 12 months we've pretty much laid it down. So there's, that's why there's a real push not to give babies antibiotics where we can help it, because we don't want to kill what's happening there, which is, I wish I'd learned more about that as a new mum. My daughter was on antibiotics about 5 or 6 times as a baby, and I kept going to the doctor, and why can't I just give her antibiotics? She's got a cough, poor little thing, can't get, breathe, just give her antibiotics. And now knowing more about it, I kind of go, I wish I'd not given her antibiotics.
What about a mum that's on antibiotics?
Yeah, so you will pass some of it through your breast milk. Doctors are very blasé about it. I don't think there's a conspiracy theory by Big Pharma in Australia, but there definitely is overseas. But there's a lot of when you look at the scientific studies, that's the only tools they've got to work with.
Yeah.
But they are kind of coming back to looking at less and less, trying not to give us antibiotics where they can. And interesting, there's a lot of research around antibiotic use and stomach acid suppressants in children, predisposing them to allergies, because the stomach acid is meant to, control what bacteria makes it in. So if we suppress it, it opens that doorway for bad bacteria to come through. And then if we then kill off everything that's there, we open the door to colonising the gut with bad stuff. So I talk a lot about that in the first aid courses when I to the allergy topic with parents, because they over prescribe Losec and Nexium and things like that. Doctors just kind of give it out like it's going out of fashion. And when I see adults in my clinic, you will often see things like overgrowth. You'll find psoriasis and things like that, skin conditions, massive in people that have stomach acid suppressants, because they've got that overgrowth of bacteria. And so, it's huge implications there. Yeah. You're like,
My brother's got a terrible rash on his head.
Yeah.
And he has Nexium all the time.
Yeah. Usually it's psoriasis or dermatitis combined with psoriasis. And it's hard, you've got to pick the better of two evils. Like in kids, if they're inconsolable, acid colic, you're going to give them stomach acid suppressants. But you might be more careful about how you introduce the high risk allergens as well. So anyway, off topic. kind of off topic.
Very interesting.
Yeah, very, I just, yeah, talk off on a tangent forever. So we kind of talked about prebiotics already, but did you know before you came here today that we've got to feed our gut bacteria? It's not just about getting probiotics.
I forgot about getting the bacteria in. I didn't realise they actually had to be fed once it's fed.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't, because it's like probiotics are sexy, like I can sell those in a bottle to you, but prebiotics are a little bit harder to get, but also easier to get, harder for me to sell you as a a big company. So we like to talk about probiotics, not prebiotics. And so how do we feed them? Let's have a look. So fibre. I love fibre. As a new nutritionist, I push fibre and vegetables, and as a nutritionist today, I push fibre and vegetables. It's really easy to get and gives us a reason why. And people come to me, and it's hard. People want like a magic pill, and so sometimes I'm there. Yeah, just eat more vegetables. I came to you and I paid for you to tell me to eat more vegetables. I could create like a powdered something and sell it to people. But it really is about going to vegetables and grains and fruits and fibre. It's if you could do one thing, and I think I've got a study I'll talk about later, but there's huge studies showing that if you say you've got someone who eats like junk, eats crap all the time, what we would consider a bad diet. I don't think there's any bad foods. I think there's habits in moderation, and then you've got someone who eats like the perfect diet. They'll have very different, high fibre, low fibre, less diversity, more diversity. If you have someone who eats both, so I always say to my clients, if you can eat chocolate, eat a carrot as well. Because if you get that fibre, studies show that you will have almost the same profile as the gut health profile as the person who eats the great diet, because you're still feeding your gut bacteria. Fibre is so important, and what I see a lot of is people who feel like they've had a bad day and then they'll skip dinner, or they'll just look at it from a calorie perspective of, and take in all these calories. I'm gonna eat not much. The thing that you need to do is get back on the horse, and your next meal needs to be that good one to fill you with all that goodness. And I mean, from a habit perspective, it's great to do, and it kind of takes away those feelings of guilt. But from a gut health perspective, it's also a really good thing you can do, is to feed that bacteria so they're not suddenly sitting there and, a bowl of fries, and they like to eat salad. So nearly 50% of Australians are limiting grains for many reasons. There is an emerging group of people that are really sensitive to gluten. Usually people would get kind of diagnosed as fibromyalgic, fibromyalgia, which is a collection of symptoms. We know now that all of those people don't actually have fibromyalgia. A lot of them have sensitive to gluten or some of the other proteins and grains. So if you have a sensitivity to grains, don't kind of go, oh, maybe it's just in my head. It's not just in your head. There is an emerging, I think they say like 10% of the population can't have grains. I did do my undergrad through a university that also housed the Grain Institute of Australia, so I found that very interesting, seeing all of that. And I've been to a lot of factories and seen how they produce grains and stuff, but there's lots that don't have gluten, so yeah, gluten's something I know that some of you guys want to reduce a little bit of, but we do want to eat our grains, because grains feed our bacteria. Oh, and this is interesting. So not all fibre is prebiotic, but all prebiotics are fibre. Yeah, I had to write it down. So lots of different types of fibre. You've probably heard, maybe people talk about insoluble, soluble, people refer to starch and things like that. They've all got different roles. So our insoluble fibre kind of protects things, so they might house things like have our antioxidants and stuff bound up in them, So they protect it to get through all the acid, protect it from being like mixed up in our stomach, and it makes its way through the small intestine and then can be extracted in our gut. So it's a protective function, but it's insoluble, so we can't digest that. We just strip it off. And it's those things that, you know, especially when you're feeding, if you've got children and you see it come out the other end, kind of in still good form. Usually those types of things, like, you know, the outside of corn and stuff like that, that literally their job is to kind of just stay intact throughout our digestive system. Soluble fibre is kind of feeds our stomach bacteria. And then our resistant starch is kind of one of the most important ones. It's got lots and lots of different functions. Saying that, just because it's important doesn't mean we need lots and lots of it too. You can have too much of a good thing. So we just want, it's very, a lot of things that have resistant starch are very energy dense, and so we do want to still be careful. We want to include them in our diet, but we don't necessarily want to go overboard on them. Yeah. So things like production of short chain fatty acids might not mean much to you guys, but this is why you can have those three people, one with their bad diet, one with their great diet, one with a mixed diet. This is why that person with a mixed diet can still eat a few bad things. I hate using the word bad things, but you know, high energy dense things. Short chain fatty acids so fibre fills us up. So you might have talked in the past about how fibre keeps us fuller for longer. That's a mechanical thing, it bulks us out. But it also, those short chain fatty acids send a signal to our brain to say we're full. Yes.
So what are resistant starches?
Resistant starches, so we'll go through that next. We'll talk to the thing about seeds, legumes, unprocessed whole grains, cold pasta, cold potato. They change, when you heat them, the starch changes conformation. And so some foods, when you heat them, they become better for you, and some when you heat them, they become worse for you. And but it's the same food. I could also go off on a tangent there as well. So with our short chain fatty acids, they send that signal. So someone who's not got much fibre doesn't produce much short chain fatty acids, so their brain doesn't get that signal as strongly as someone who's got lots, that they're full. So that's why we can, another aspect of overeating, if you're eating foods that are not high in fibre, you can eat lots more of them because it's not sending that signal. It might be have that stretch that you're used to, but you're still hungry. And that's probably a really important thing to keep in mind is, you know, if you've got those 2 plates of food, and they're the same size, they're both going to have that feeling here, but you're not always going to get that feeling here of being full. But then there's all the emotional stuff bound up in it as well, like this, you know, serotonin and stuff like that. 90% of serotonin is made in our gut, which is pretty cool by these guys. So we'll get onto the link through mood and anxiety and stuff like that. I didn't look at the time when we started. My biggest fear at a presentation is like running out of content, so I always put like groups in. So these are our resistant starches. So there's four groups. We've got our my takeaway from this is that things like banana, you know, our cold potato, cold pasta, so salads, really good options. That's why they're nice and filling as well, because the starch is kind of making those short chain fatty acids and sending that signal. We've got our nuts and seeds and whole grains and things like that. The other thing I would say is like the thing that gets worse when you heat it is cheese. Cheese changes conformation and the fats become not so great fats. So if you make cheese, a toasted cheese sandwich is worse for you than a non-toasted cheese sandwich. Yeah, I know. It's more delicious and that's why. Yeah. Yeah.
Ham and cheese, every job.
So. A few studies. I'm one of those people that if there's no scientific study for it, I don't really talk about it too much. That's science view. Like that's why people, when they make recommendations, it's based on science. It's based on us being able to repeat it a number of times. It's not to say something. There's lots of things out there that we can't prove with science that we know work. Maybe because we don't know yet, or maybe because that we can make it work a few times. Because it sometimes works with some people. But we know that when we look at big studies, we say how reproducible is this? If I had 100 people and applied it to them, what's the percentage of people I can make a difference with? And one of these studies swapped the diets of rural Africans with African Americans. So they put low fibre, high fat to high fibre, low fat, and they saw a change in the risk markers for colorectal cancer in 2 weeks. So in the rural Africans, by giving them a low fibre, high fat diet. So that kind of highlights that point of the quickness that our gut health can be changed. And we saw with the African Americans that the risk factors dropped. So I thought that was really cool. I wanted to include that. I know. Yeah, look at his tummy. Yeah, I love this one. The biggest thing I get when I try to increase people's fibre is they get really gassy if we do it really quickly. So if you're going to make a dietary change, we want to do it nice and slowly. So we've got an ecosystem living there. We've all got one. They like to eat what we like to feed them. So if we're going to change it, we want to do it slowly. But if you do it quickly, you will get a bit gassy. These guys ferment stuff, like that's their job. So just because you've got bloating doesn't always mean that you've got it's bad for you. Unless you've got kind of chronic bloating going on from your usual diet, that to me would be a sign that maybe there's something not so great going on in there. Maybe you haven't got the right bacteria to ferment what you've been eating. Maybe you've got some bad bacteria in there. And that's why you see when people take, it almost reinforces that people's bias for food. So if you, say, go off a particular type of food for a long time, say you stop eating bananas, and you don't eat bananas for 10 years, and then suddenly you eat a banana, you're going to get a bit bloated because you don't have as many bacteria that can digest bananas. So the ones you've got are going to go crazy because they're going to overeat that banana. They're not sharing it against, a million of them, only 10 of them are eating banana. And so you're going to ferment more and you're going to feel a bit yucky. Doesn't mean that you're allergic to bananas. It just means that you need to grow those bacteria and do it slowly over time. Saying that, some people might be allergic to bananas, but that should settle down, your gas should settle down. It takes about 2 weeks to get used to eating that. And I used to sing that song when I was little, baked beans, they make you fart, baked beans are good for your heart, the more you eat, the more you fart. And if you fart when you eat baked beans, it's probably a sign that you're not getting enough fibre. Because you should be able to eat them without farting. So
I'm going to try it with all the foods I eat now.
Yeah. Yeah. So some of the things that we that can really play havoc on our gut bacteria and really cut us well through it are excessive dieting. So someone who changes their diet all the time, or someone who restricts foods. Those two things, I get a lot of clients who will say to me, I've tried 6 diets this year and none of them worked. I mean, AM1, you're not going to get any results if you're switching that quickly. But secondly, changing what you eat dramatically that many times is really going to kill off what you've got there, not give them much consistency at all. So you'll start to kind of get some really bad effects happen from that. Antibiotics, of course, we talked about before, will kill off everything there. Traveller's diarrhea, so food poisoning and things like that, will, it's a bad bacteria coming in and making a home, killing off, because it'll produce its own antimicrobial compounds, which will start to kill off what's around it, so like taking an antibiotic. So it'll start to really kill off what's in there. If it's bad enough and goes on for long enough, you'll kill off a lot of that. Yeah, when I had Campylobacter, it traditionally lasts 7 to 14 days. I had it for 21 days, and I was like vomiting bile. There was nothing left in my stomach, so horrific. Drugs and alcohol, you can probably, from what we've talked about, understand now why something like drugs and alcohol would make such a big difference. They change the pH balance in our body, and allow bad stuff to come in, but they can also have effects on killing off what's there. Smoking as well can have negative effects. I still don't understand why smokers always get sick right after they quit smoking. I have a feeling it has to do with their gut bacteria. Illness, surgery, gallbladder removal is massive for your gut health, massive. You will, it changes the pH balance, you'll be more susceptible to bad bacteria coming in. It'll be harder to grow you good bacteria, so that's a huge one. Things like gastric banding and stuff like that, because they reduce that capacity down there. Supplements, overdoses of supplements. I always think there's a place for supplementation if you've got haven't got enough of something and you can't get it quickly with your diet. There is a place there, but there's no need to be on a supplement all the time unless you've got an ongoing need for that. And overconsumption of supplements can change the pH and play havoc with your gut bacteria. And stress. Stress is massive. Stress slows our digestion. So stress is the body releasing adrenaline. It's keeping us in a heightened state, and we need to run from the lion. We don't need to be sitting back digesting our food, so it acts to slow our digestion. If we slow our digestion, stuff's moving through there a lot slower, it will completely change the environment down there. If we've got prolonged ongoing stress in our lives, it's going to play havoc with our gut health. So it's so hard. I've worked in an office before and just people have suggested, reducing the stress in my life. I can't do it. I can't do that. I've got no time to go to meditation. I can't, it is so important, so important to take some time for you, no matter what that looks like. I like to think of it as my third space. My third space is my car. Like when I'm driving from place to place, I try not to talk to people in my car. I try to just take the time for me. I started to listen to podcasts and stuff. It'll look different for all of us. I went to a conference once and there was a guy that, what did he do? He built in the garage, instead of having the garage go into the house, he had another door that went into his bedroom so that he could get out of his car after work and go into his bedroom and have some time to himself before he, went into see the family, and that was his third space. So sometimes you've got to be a bit creative about it to reduce that stress. Okay, so that. Let me just pick up what do I got, like regulation. This is just what we were talking about. So short chain fatty acids and the effect that they can have on our brains and reducing that need to keep eating. So telling us we're full, as well as physical expanding. The other interesting thing is this study showed that there are taste receptors. We all know we've got taste buds on our tongue. We've got taste receptors that go all the way down through our gastric system. So when you make a change to your diet, it's not just, we've got willpower and all of that, but our stomach sending 90% of signals outwards will be sending signals saying, you need to feed me what I like to eat, what I'm used to eating. So it makes it that much harder sometimes to make a dietary change when, our head and, we've made this decision, but we've got signals coming from here telling us, hey, I like to eat burgers, or that block of chocolate every night, I want to feed me that. So it can make it a little bit harder. I found that really interesting. We don't know too much about them. There's heaps more research going on into those taste receptors and the effects that they exert. Mental health. This is cool. So mental health, when they write, and we don't have many human studies. The human studies we've got are really small. So what we've got is based on mice. But when you raise mice in a germ-free environment, so they've got no bacteria growing there. I mean, A&1, they've got less genes, but secondly, they're highly stressed. Their levels of stress are a lot higher, just that one difference of the bacteria down in their tummy, which is pretty cool. We know that when they did do a human study, they only studied 29 people, which is, from a scientific perspective, a very low cohort. We want to see it reproduced with lots more people. But they treated them with bifidobacteria, which is really high in breast milk, but that's not obviously where they got it from, but bifidobacteria. And they treated them for 4 weeks with it. And we saw decreased levels of stress, higher levels of cognitive function, decreased levels of depression, anxiety, fear, and this has implications for things like PTSD, anxiety, depression, all of that, which I thought was really cool. We know that the other implication, which I don't think I've talked about anywhere here, around mice raised with no bacteria, that they've got a lot of similarities. You get them to express more traits that you see in autism. So there's huge implications for treatment, which is, I mean, ethically, it's quite hard to study because someone who is on the spectrum is just expressing things differently, and who's to say that that's not, that we should be changing that. But we know that when we reintroduce bacteria to mice showing these traits, that they reverse them. So at my last session, there was a lady in the room that had her 30-year-old son was autistic, and she had been through a long journey herself of improving his gut health and helping him to improve his quality of life through that. So I found that really, really interesting. Immunity. So we talked a little bit already about the mucosal layer being influenced by those bacteria and stopping bad bacteria coming and taking hold. One little thing that I found really, really interesting was that a low diversity in our gut is associated with eczema and the expression of allergies. So things like skin conditions can be improved by improving your gut health. Well, yeah, of course it's gut health. Yeah. So food and mood, they did the SMILES study. It looked at 1,000 women. It was in 2018, I think. 17. And they looked at interventions on people suffering from mood disorders like depression. And they looked at socioeconomic kind of interventions, like how can we help them in that manner, and they looked at dietary interventions. And we found that the dietary interventions were far more longer lasting, they were cheaper, and they had better effects on mood than the socioeconomic interventions. So food can really help our mood.
I read a study that they did a small fecal implant with people that had a really healthy gut into people who had depression, and they were completely different, exhibiting completely different things that they'd ever done before.
Yeah, I've got a slide for that.
So interesting. I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, it's so cool. They did a lot of animal studies. They did studies with mice with poo transplants, and you can make a mouse depressed by giving it poo from a depressed mouse. But you can also make a mouse overweight by giving it poo from an overweight mouse, and vice versa. All sorts of stuff. Yeah, it's amazing. I've got a friend who's got Crohn's disease, and she's been looking at a fecal transplant. But I was like, make sure it's from a happy person. Yeah. So, what have I got? Yeah, so we've talked already about 90% of signals going outwards from the gut. Stress slowing our digestion, and what's in the gut should stay in the gut. So when we get a breakdown of all that messaging, things can travel, pathogens can travel through the walls. We can get, pathogens moving to parts of our body and inflammation where it shouldn't be, not just localised to the gut. And so we really, really want to take care of our gut health and promote healthy gut health so that everything's meant to stays there, doesn't move around. Talked about the first 12 months. 90% of our serotonin is produced in the gut, so the happier we can make our tummy, the happier we can be as people. And we find that gut symptoms are, if you look at people that are of ill health, so chronic conditions, we'll find that their gut health is always not the greatest as well. But a lot of people think of, well, I'll take care of that later, not realising that it's a foundation for our health, and that if we get that right, we can lessen the symptoms and things. I mean, we're not going to cure everything with it, but we can. That's kind of a foundation. You can't get improvement here if you ignore what's down here. People always ask me if fermented foods, what they're cracked up to be. It doesn't harm your diet to have them. It won't necessarily improve your gut health. because it's got to make its way through all the acid in our stomach. It's got to kind of survive its way all the way through our stomach, small intestines to our large intestines. Saying that, I worked in a pharmacy when I was first doing I've got a Bachelor of Arts as well, in Business Studies, History and English, that I did before my law degree, and I worked in a pharmacy, and we had this 70-year-old pharmacist who he was misogynistic and completely supported patriarchy, but he used to make cracks about women, if you eat yogurt, you won't get thrush. And so there is a case to be had for probiotic foods in your diet will help some people. They just won't necessarily help everybody. I remember him mentioning it once to a woman, and she was like, "Do I put it down there? Or do I eat it?" You can do both. But you want to make sure it's got live bacteria. So buying your bottle of kombucha that's been, we don't know how it's been stored. We don't know if it's been sitting in a hot truck, from Sydney. We don't know, if they're live bacteria by the time they actually make it to us. Yeah. Do
you know the source? You know how you can get it from the source, bulk source?
Oh yeah.
Do you know what theirs is like?
No, I can't. I will make myself water kefir, I make my own at home, but I just can't stomach kombucha. It's
quite strong.
Yeah, it's full on. Poo pills, here we go. We've talked about poo pills. So the future of this is, if we know that someone's got bad gut health, if we can, once the research catches up and we can identify what people are missing, there's implications for us to be able to treat it by adding that bacteria safely to help people recolonise their gut. But until we can identify kind of all of the bacteria that live there, what people are missing, what quantities they need, and keep it alive once it's there, taking a probiotic can be really, really hit and miss. So don't race out and spend your money on it if you don't really, really need to. The best thing you can do for your gut health is to start eating heaps of fibre to keep what's there alive and start to get it to multiply. Because it's dividing every 20 minutes or so. So in a few weeks you can turn that into heaps more yourself. You don't need to go and spend $100 and stuff that might not survive. Extinction. So 4 generations of a low fibre diet can result in an extinction of your of that. So if I have low fibre, my mum had low fibre, her mum, you can see extinction of some of these. And that's why in the Western world our health just seems to be compounding and getting worse and worse and worse as each generation goes on, because we're really destroying these little ecosystems that live in us. So we've kind of talked about this already, diversity. So eat lots of different things. I had a client recently who likes to eat iceberg lettuce, tomato and cucumber, and she's like, can I just eat more of that? Well, yeah, she can eat more of that, but it would be great if she could throw in all different types, eat the rainbow, lots of different colours. We're meant to eat 5 servings of fruit and vegetables a day. A serving is half a cup cooked or 1 cup raw, and if you make each of those servings a different type of vegetable or a different colour, you'll go a long way to feeding that gut bacteria. This is my last analogy. So, what kind of home are you going to make for your bacteria? Imagine you've got 3 million people and you from 5 different countries, and you promise them paradise, houses, plenty of food, and you got them there, and what they found was this. And maybe a hot food truck turns up once a week. Most people would kind of move on, they'd be like, well, we're going to go find paradise somewhere else. You might get a few undesirables who like hot chips who hang around for that. You probably don't want them there. And that's what our gut health is going to be like if we don't give it a happy home. It's just going to leave and kind of die off, and you'll be left with this kind of barren wasteland, which doesn't produce much of anything. But we want this, we want paradise. So the best thing you guys can do is to eat more fibre. More fibre, more fruit, more vegetables, more grain, healthy whole grains, stuff that's less processed, because that gives us more nutrients. And that, I think, is me. Perfect. Excellent. I didn't keep you here all afternoon. Sometimes I just talk and talk. So I guess we'll do some questions. I've got a little worksheet to get you guys thinking about your gut health and maybe some of the signals that signal not great gut health. A poo is kind of the main one. With a 4.5-year-old, I'm experienced lifting a poo in the, into the toilet bowl to see what hers is like. And, yeah. Questions? Yeah.
So I've had like tons of antibiotics in my life, like tons and tons.
Yeah.
What is the best thing to do? Like when you finish a course of antibiotics, what is the best thing to kind of you can put in?
Yeah, fibre.
Fibre.
Because you'll still have hopefully some of your. I mean, there's millions of them in there. 2 kilos worth, you know, and we hopefully caught it pretty early. And that's why when you have a really ingrained infection for a long time, they'll hit it with more antibiotics because it will have more time to multiply. You know, the bad stuff will be dividing quickly as well. Fibre. I know from personal experience, I've had a lot of clients who's had success and improvement with probiotics. It really is hit and miss though. So if you're gonna pick a probiotic, try to pick something that's got a number of different, like, you know, a few species in there and a few different types of each species. There's only there's one really good one, I wrote it down, on the market. What's it called? VSL number 3. It's got 3 species and it's got 8 different bacteria.
Is that letters VSL?
Yeah, no, VSL, yeah, letters number 3. There's a few places you can buy it. It's about $100 for a 30-day supply, and you want to be on for about 20 days. But you don't need to keep adding more bacteria. Like hopefully that survives. So it's in a huge. You want to have a kind of a huge dosage of it, which that one supplies. And when it kind of makes it down to your gut, it's kind of like hibernating. So it's like half asleep. Most probiotics will ferment a few things before you poo them out. But if they can't get a foothold in there, they're not going to stay and grow. So if we are looking for a probiotic, we want to have a few species, a few bacteria, and be quite a high dosage. We don't want to take it for too long, and we want to make sure we're getting prebiotics to feed it and keep it alive while it's there. Yeah. Good
And
question.
sorry, just on the fibre as well, what are your sort of like 3 highest sources of fibre and vegetables? Because it's like leafy greens and stuff.
Yeah, look, I really like smoothies. For me, are the best ways of getting it. Like kind of, you can hit all your bases with a smoothie. I put oats into my smoothies, which at first I was a bit like, oh, is this going to be really like, right? But it was actually quite good. So you can get, I like to put oats in. I like to put a bit of kale in. Most people hate kale because it can be really bitter. Don't ever put the stem, like the stalk in. Rip the leaves off that. If you eat the stalk, you will never eat kale ever again. It's disgusting. But I can put it into a smoothie because I can cover it with other stuff. Some chia seeds, give you some good fats in there. But then you can add in like fruit and veg and carrots. Carrots go really well in a smoothie. I've got a Thermomix, so I just like put everything in and blend it up. So you don't want to strain your juices. You want the nice, you know, insoluble fibre in there as well. Yeah, but that's the best way. I just eat the rainbow. I always think of like some orange stuff, some red stuff, some green stuff, whole grains. You know, even if you can't really stomach white rice, like brown rice. Start mixing your rices together to, you know, start working it in. Don't expect brown rice to taste like white rice. It's like people that drink.
It's very nutty.
Yeah, it's like people that suddenly start drinking almond milk and expect it to taste like cow's milk. It's not the same thing. It's not gonna. Yeah, but you can mix it together to kind of as a gateway to get there. Yeah. Good question. Any other questions? Yeah.
Examples of soluble fibre?
So pectin, so fruits are great soluble fibres. And the hard thing is that some vegetables will be soluble. Anything with kind of a higher sugar content. I always think of things as like really pectin-y as soluble. Something that's not cannot be digested by a gut bacteria at all is psyllium husks. A lot of people take that to help with like constipation. But it's not digested. That's why it's good for constipation. It helps to kind of bulk it and move everything out. So if you are taking kind of fibres and stuff, just be really careful that it's doing what you want it to do. That's not going to feed gut bacteria. Yeah. At the front too.
Maybe like the difference between, so like if I had a bowl of all bran,
Yeah.
right, I'll go oh, that's
Yeah.
really painful. But if I have like
Yeah.
chia pudding or something, I feel like that's
Yeah,
kind
so,
of what's the difference in like you've probably got really
Yeah.
super intense fibre, right?
yeah, chia pudding I think has got from memory more soluble fibre than
Yeah.
insoluble, whereas the all bran would be like insoluble.
Insoluble.
Yeah. So it would have its benefits, but you probably don't need like heaps and heaps of it. And when you look at your cereals, like a lot of us overeat cereal and grain. Grains, we need 6 servings. And to confuse matters, about 3 years ago they changed what was considered a serving of grain. So 1 bit of bread is 1 serving. If you're under 45, you only want to eat like maximum 6 servings a day. So it's 1 bit of bread or like half a cup of cooked stuff. So imagine half a cup of cooked pasta. We're only allowed, so that's 3 cups a day if you're under 45. Once you're over 45, that drops to 4. So a lot of us massively overeat grains anyway, like we're overloading on them. And that's why people get such good benefits once you strip, like from a weight loss perspective, once you strip them out, because they're hugely calorie dense. And that drops in that 45 to 50-year-old bracket. So, yeah.
You talked about celiac and the small
Yeah.
intestine. A lot of women, myself included, as they get older, thyroid
Yeah.
issues.
Yeah.
Where's that connection, or is there, or is that?
Yeah, no, there's not really a connection that I know. I'm not an expert in celiac. Thyroid, I see a lot of thyroid damage done by like dieting, cutting stuff out and not getting enough vitamins that support our thyroids. People that really strip anything with like vitamin A and thiamine and stuff like that out of their diets are eventually going to have a thyroid issue. Yeah, so it can be genetic, but it also can also be environmental and things that have happened. Also toxic chemicals and stuff like that can also impact our thyroid. Yeah. Did you know that?
Yeah, you mentioned gallbladder.
Yeah.
What's that? What's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
answer there?
Yeah, it is. You'll have to be a little, I mean, you've got to be a bit more careful with fats once you've had your gallbladder removed. And I think it has something to do with the bile and the acid-base balance, and possibly then being more susceptible to overgrowth of bacteria once your gallbladder's been removed. So you still want to have lots of fibre. Yeah.
So the take-home message is really that fibre and variation is key. So, because when I think about everyone I know, we've all had heaps of antibiotics. Maybe not everyone, but most of us have.
Yeah, absolutely. As a nation, we kind of tend to tick 3 or 4 boxes each, and so the best thing we can do is through our diet and making sure we're feeding what we've got there and letting it multiply. But you won't always see that on the outside straight away. Lots of water as well is really important for getting this to move through your body. If you suddenly increase your fibre intake, you're going to get really backed up as well, and water will help you work that through. You'll see improvements in your skin, in your hair, and it's not just because you're suddenly getting all of these vitamins. These bacteria are helping us to extract those vitamins, and that's why you simply can't suddenly replace food with pills, because you're not going to get the benefit. That's not going to fit. That might help to kind of keep us on our feet and help bridge a gap, but it's not going to feed our tummy bacteria, and in the long term you'll see your results dropping off at the end of it. So it can bridge a gap for a short time, but I'm not a fan of people that sell kind of it's just in this pill, take this and it'll solve all your problems.
And does this protective kind of layer in our gut, does that extend to my sinuses?
Yeah. And you'll see a huge difference in sinus issues with water. Water is probably one of the best things you can do. People always say that, when kids have like green snot, like, you can't see them out in public. The colour of our snot's actually more related to our hydration levels than anything else. And not necessarily, I mean, yes, it's a sign that we're clearing lots of bad stuff, but you'll find if you are really, really, really hydrated, that your snot, no matter how secure, is really clear. And you'll find, because I've got narrow sinus passages as well, and the more hydrated, the more flush they will be. But also, the less likely for bacteria to come in and take hold as well. Yeah. Do you have a question?
Yeah, what do you recommend, like, what for autoimmune disease, like, what do you say not to have, or?
Yeah, look, I don't like to tell people not to have things. I'm a big fan of let's add stuff in, all the good stuff, and eventually over time it'll edge out the not so desirable stuff or reduce it in our lives. You know, I'm a sweet tooth. Well, actually, no, I'm an everything tooth. I'm an overeater. Like, I love to eat. But I also make sure that I get kind of all my food groups. So I get enough, you know, I don't overeat meat. That was another thing I didn't talk about. High protein intake is not great. So it's got some great benefits. It's a high thermic effect, you know, helps us lose weight. It's good. There's a misconception that if we get too much, because you can only process 45 grams at a time, and then that loads our kidneys and we weigh it out. But what it also does is promote bacteria in our gut that break down protein. So you'll get more carcinogenic bacteria and more bacteria that feed on protein down in our gut if you have too much protein there as well. So that's why people that, you know, I don't know if you guys have heard, you know, these men at the gym that drink protein shakes all the time, they get really gassy and they fart and it's really stinky because they've got more bacteria down there that, that's such a generalisation, sorry, that feed on protein. So we do want to, you know, we don't necessarily need to eat less protein, but we don't want to eat too much. You know, I don't want people having like a 300 gram steak every night. There's a lot to be said for a few, you know, veggie only nights as well. But for autoimmune, one of the best things you can do for yourself and to see a reduction in your symptoms is to and to weather the storm a little bit better. You know, those flare-ups and things is to have a good foundation by keeping our gut bacteria nice and healthy. Yeah.
And what is the easy way of making the fermented food?
I'm not an expert in making fermented food. I've been trying to find a really good workshop or something to go to learn to do it myself. I'm really partial to, I like the fermented beetroot and ginger. It's like I don't like the cabbage, that's a bit but the beetroot and ginger is my favourite thing. But yeah, every workshop I seem to find everyone's got an angle and I'm like, I don't want to be sold like that. I just want to go and learn how to do the food. But yeah, YouTube's always a good place to have a look. But there's lots out there. You know, the big supermarkets have started selling things as well. Just check, you know, on the back what's in it. Yeah. Cool.